From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sweeney Gray. Almost 200 people are missing in Guatemala after the eruption of the Fuego volcano on Sunday afternoon, officials have said. Villagers on the slopes were buried under ash and mud. Emergency services were forced to evacuate residents from areas surrounding the volcano after yet another eruption sent lava spewing down its south side. At least 75 people have lost their lives. Authorities say more than 1.7 million people have been affected by the eruption, with over 3,200 people evacuated from the area following the initial eruption alone. Search and rescue efforts on the outskirts of the Fuego volcano in Guatemala have been affected by new eruptions and heavy rainfall.
Little by little, rescue teams are reaching the slopes of the Fuego volcano in the village of El Rodeo. The landscape makes the magnitude of the tragedy clear. Vehicles overturned by tons of volcanic material. Houses completely buried bring to the light the number of people who could not escape the eruption.
My aunts are missing. Also the children are missing. I don't know where they are.
The search has been difficult because there is still extremely hot volcanic waste in the area, which prevents entry to the most affected communities. The survivors say that they can identify where there are families buried, but due to safety precautions, they are prevented from getting to the disaster zone.
We have to identify the bodies. They are probably disfigured, but if we find the place, we could probably recognize who they are.
Between the debris, animals have been found alive, but with severe cases of dehydration.
Some of them are hungry, some of them burned, some intoxicated. We have irritated eyes. The biggest problem is that we carry them to a safe place, but there is no one who takes them to their families, so they will probably get lost.
A new and powerful eruption forced rescue teams to evacuate the disaster zone and suspend their rescue efforts. At the same time, dozens of families have left the southern department due to the fear of toxic gases from the volcano.
A resolution seeking to expel Venezuela from the Organization of American States has failed. The resolution didn't get the two-thirds majority it needed at a session of the OAS in Washington late on Tuesday. 19 countries voted in favor, 4 against, and 11 countries abstained. Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arias condemned the resolution as illegal and said his people will solve any internal difficulties without OAS interference. The vote was largely symbolic, as Venezuela is already in the process of leaving the organization.
They have imposed more than 14 sanctions against Venezuela. Unblock Venezuela and lift the sanctions against the country so that Venezuela can come along using its own resources. That way we will be able to meet the needs of our people.
Last year, a series of attempts at the OAS to win support for intervention in Venezuela also failed, partly because of opposition from CARICOM members. This year, the vote was closer. 4 countries opposed the resolution to expel Venezuela, including Bolivia, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. 11 members abstained, including Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Grenada, Haiti, St. Kitts and Nevis, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago. The 19 countries that voted for the resolution included the Bahamas, Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, and St. Lucia. Regarding the OAS resolution, Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno said on Twitter, the sanctions imposed on Venezuela have generated more tensions and mostly harm to those in need. He thinks a real solution can only be achieved through dialogue. Moreno also recommended that Venezuela hold an internal referendum so the people can definitively say if they accept the results of the May 20th election. And Ecuador's Foreign Minister Maria Fernanda Espinosa is the newly elected chair of the United Nations General Assembly. Espinosa will be the first woman from Latin America to chair the body, and she'll become the fourth woman ever to hold the presidency of the General Assembly in its more than 7-decade existence. In an exclusive telesur interview, she discussed some of her plans for the future.
I would say that what the world needs is to solve so many complex issues, such as climate change, security crisis on an international level, as well as the challenge to fight poverty and inequality, or the challenge to create decent jobs for the new generation. All of these challenges should have a multilateral approach. The regional integration process is multilateralism. The United Nations are the privileged place. The UN General Assembly is the greatest parliament for humankind, where each country, each member state, has an equal seat. So the role of the president is to drive dialogue among the countries, and I am very honored to take this role.
Espinosa also spoke about the role of women and said she is committed to establishing gender equality as a priority in the UN General Assembly's agenda.
My commitment is that within the agenda of the United Nations, women's issues appear as a transversal element as well as gender equality in every topic that we approach. Even if we talk about climate change, then the role of women is important, and also their special vulnerabilities. So my commitment is to approach equality and women's political and economical empowerment in all the topics the General Assembly deals with. That is a challenge, but I believe it is the right time to put these issues on the table.
Presidential candidate Ivan Duque called the Venezuelan government a dictatorship as he campaigned along the Venezuela border. The right-wing candidate walked along the Simón Bolívar bridge that unites Colombia and Venezuela to express, he said, solidarity with the Venezuelan people. Duque, handpicked by former President Álvaro Uribe, has promised to modify Colombia's 2016 peace deal with the FARC and to cut taxes. He will face the leftist Gustavo Petro in the June 17th presidential election.
Today we came here to the border to express our solidarity with the people of Venezuela. A solidarity that firstly is for Colombia to collaborate internationally for free elections, and in addition, to show that in the border region we want a humanitarian assistance fund and we want orderly immigration, and also the prompt attention of various countries for temporary protective status to permit many Venezuelans to find opportunities.
Candidate Gustavo Petro has been endorsed by the National Indigenous Organization. The coalition published a statement in which they say that voting for Petro is voting for the end of violence in the country to achieve the goals established by the peace accords, it says. They say over the past year they've seen benefits of the peace agreements like a decrease in victims, social and economic development in the areas of conflict, and democratic participation in the communities.
Let's vote on June 17 for Gustavo Petro, for Colombia Humana, because that is voting for life, voting for peace, for a transformation to end corruption, and so we Colombians have a chance for a real change to dignify everyone's life. We are voting for Petro. We are changing this country into the new generation who live in peace. Join us.
Israel is blaming Palestinians for the cancellation of the international friendly football match with Argentina. The decision was met with mixed feelings on the street, and some fans expressed their disappointment at not being able to see the footballer Messi and accused the game of becoming politicized. But while Israel said it was disappointed, the Palestinians welcomed the decision.
According to the FIFA statutes and according to their principles, their ethics and their mission to promote ethics and values and to build a bridge between nations rather than to be a bridge or a tool for political ends, as the Israelis tried to use Messi and those stars from Argentina. And I would like to thank them and appreciate their decision, which I think was on the right track.
And as you just heard, the Argentinian Football Association cancelled its planned friendly with Israel after an intense campaign by pro-Palestinian groups calling for a peaceful boycott against Israel. Argentina striker Gonzalo Higuain told ESPN they've finally done the right thing. We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. In Peru, a demonstration against the government's economic policies ended with clashes between protesters and police officers. Thousands gathered in front of the Peruvian Congress to protest planned tax hikes. Police deployed tear gas against protesters and some fires broke out in surrounding areas. The austerity policies planned by the Peruvian government got even more controversial as it was revealed that members of parliament used their tax-funded expenses for goods such as flowers, televisions, or iPads. Because of this, Peruvian Minister of the Economy, David Tuesta, resigned on Monday. And 3 months after Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra took office, political analysts believe there have been no meaningful changes to the government policies, and fear Vizcarra is beholden to the ultra-conservative sectors, much like his predecessor Fujimori.
In press briefings, President Martin Vizcarra attempts to separate himself from any similarities to his predecessor, deposed former President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Yet, when Vizcarra talks about economic development plans for the country, his focus remains on a model based on exports, which is the same as the past 5 governments.
As I said on March 23rd, the day I took office, and as was ratified yesterday, there will be no change to our economic policy. As a matter of fact, we are fully behind our policy.
Some political sectors say they see Vizcarra offering gestures of goodwill towards the people. They point to his intention to provide autonomy to local governments, but economic policies that have long benefited the business sector remain unchanged.
Words are not enough. The people want to see real commitment. Will there be tax justice in our country? Will those with the most be made to pay what they should?
I believe Mr. Vizcarra has to move forward with early elections because he has not chosen to lead the country.
For political analysts, Vizcarra is a weak government. He has no support in Congress, nor with social sectors, leaving him to rely on ultra-conservative sectors such as Fujimorismo.
It's quite evident they're in negotiations with Fujimorismo as well as with private sectors. The pressure comes from agriculture exporters, from businessmen like Roque Benavides and the National Confederation of Private Business Institutions. But now they start to realize they must also deal with the pressure coming from people's malaise.
Vizcarra has also said he will maintain Kuczynski's foreign policy, such as leading the Lima Group. For analysts, this is yet another sign that Vizcarra stands for neoliberal continuity.
The Inter-American Court of Human Rights has made a decision on the former Peruvian president Alberto Fujimori's pardon. The verdict, however, has yet to remain public. The announcement was made by lawyer Ronald Gamara, who carried different investigations into corruption into human rights violations during Fujimori's term. The Inter-American Court has to first notify its decision to the parties before making it public. Relatives of the victims of the massacres of Barrios Altos and La Cantuta requested the court's intervention after the former Peruvian president Pedro Pablo Kuczynski granted a controversial pardon to Fujimori last December. Meanwhile, the Peruvian Congress will decide if Fujimori's son, Kenji, will be expelled from the chamber after alleged buying of votes. Kenji is accused of illegally trying to prevent the dismissal of the president, back then Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, who resigned in March. On Twitter, Kenji said he is ready for the battle. Opposition groups in Nicaragua continue their campaign against President Daniel Ortega. Social media has played a critical role during this crisis, which has been going on for more than 50 days.
Teodora has lived in one of Guatemala City's busiest streets for over 10 years. She sells cooked beans and firewood to support herself. She has no knowledge of social media, but she knows what's happening in the streets and what she wants for her country.
What
I want is for this craziness to end. Innocents are dying, infrastructure is being damaged. They are only making things worse, for all of us. I have stood with Daniel Ortega from the beginning. He has been a good president.
Journalist and political analyst Absalon Pastora believes that what's happening in Nicaragua is just a masquerade that has used social media to spread lies.
What we are living through cannot end in war. This is what some media outlets are pushing for, so that all of Nicaragua ends up mourning more losses. A killer is not just one that pulls the trigger, but those who incite violence, be it through videos or in written form. Such methods might end up being deadlier than a rifle's magazine that was just emptied.
Lower House Representative Edwin Castro believes that disinformation on social media is damaging Nicaraguan society. It creates unstable political and economical environments. Nonetheless, he trusts that reason and maturity will prevail.
We have seen dead police, dead children. I hope that the OAS approves the resolution we presented and condemns this wave of violence during the recent bilateral dialogue. Our first request was an end to this violence, but it has continued. There are other representatives here who preach about peace, but are financing protests.
The Episcopal Conference, which served as a mediator and witness in the recent peace talks, decided to stop conversations due to the ongoing violence. The government has continued to call for peace and dialogue with the opposition in order to find a solution to the conflict.
Truck drivers in Argentina are headed towards a general strike to demand higher wages and reject the government's negotiations with the IMF. This could affect garbage collection and fuel transportation. If it keeps going, it could create shortages of products all over the country. Workers say they face a cost of living that surpasses their salaries, so they are demanding an increase of 27% to match the price of inflation for 2018. Meanwhile, mass firings and factory shutdowns continue as President Mauricio Macri vetoed a law that would have stopped the price hikes.
Honestly, I don't understand why the government continues to strangle the popular sectors, unless they want to start a social conflict. If this continues, that's what they'll get, because we will not give up our jobs. So we truly hope the government stops provoking us.
We have tried to have an open dialogue over what's happening. We don't just want to talk about our salaries, but also about the IMF's so-called assistance, the price scale, and the general uncertainty we live in.
We need to fight and twist the government's arm. They cannot keep trying to accommodate all masters. Workers can't take it anymore.
In Panama, nearly 1 month after the end of the construction strike, workers are facing a negative backlash after winning a pay increase. The media and business groups have blamed the strike for the drop in the International Monetary Fund's rating for the country from 5.6% to 4.6%. The industry is also trying to justify the increase of housing costs when official figures indicate that houses were already being sold for 10 times their price. The strike achieved a 14% salary increase for workers, something that, according to them, has generated resentment from industry managers. According to experts, the economic growth of Panama is not benefiting workers nor the population.
We can see that locally, media outlets continue with their hate campaign against the triumph of the workers. And this is because they can still not comprehend the unity, discipline, and self-determination workers have had during this strike.
Women in Chile rally again to protest violence against women and to put an end to the patriarchal culture in the country. Our correspondent in Santiago, Thierry Valenzuela, brings us the details.
The feminist wave keeps spreading in Chile. Women have taken the streets not only to demand a free, public and quality education, but also a non-sexist one. The goal of today's demonstration is to get women, mothers, migrants and workers to urge the Chilean government to listen. We will see how this demonstration goes here in Santiago de Chile.
In Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Mottley and her economic team met with an IMF delegation headed by Vert van Selm as the country contemplates entering an IMF program. The government also announced the appointment of British firm White Oak Advisory as its financial advisor in the debt restructuring process. It is expected that Barbados' credit rating will be shortly adjusted down to selective default, as is customary when debt restructurings are announced. And Barbados' sargassum seaweed problem continues to hamper the country's coastline. In Tent Bay, St. Joseph, residents say it is the most seaweed they've ever seen. It's also begun to trap and kill wildlife. The seaweed has been an annual problem in the Caribbean. Sargassum seaweed is also costing Grenada hundreds of tens of thousands of dollars a week to clean up. According to estimates, the Grenadian government has spent over $100,000 over the past month. And it doesn't seem like there will be any reprieve. The beaches of St. Andrews, St. David and Carriacou have been covered by the sargassum. Residents report feeling ill because of the smell. And Minister of Climate Resilience Simon Steele says he hopes to turn the problem into a solution.
The influx of sargassum is here to stay. Satellite images show no let-up in the amount of sargassum that is drifting our way. So we're looking at how we can turn a problem into an opportunity. We are in discussions with the OECS Secretariat, and they are setting up a task force with affected member states to look at how we can upscale an initiative that was started in St. Lucia, where there is a processing facility that converts the sargassum or extracts the nutrients out of the sargassum to produce liquid fertilizer.
We're going to take another short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. The United Nations has called on the United States to immediately stop detaining and separating migrant families at the southern border, saying it violates the rights of children. At the Otay Mesa Detention Center near San Diego, several hundred detainees of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement are held awaiting immigration hearings to decide on their asylum request. Most crossings from this point of the border are from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. The UN Human Rights Office said it was deeply concerned by the zero-tolerance policy introduced by the Trump administration to deter asylum seekers.
About detaining children. As I said, detention is never in the best interest of the child and always constitutes a child rights violation. On this being a criminal offense, as I said, entry into a country without the right papers should at most be an administrative offense, and it certainly does not warrant jailing children.
And finally, from the United States, a car chase you don't see every day. Virginia State Police arrested a soldier from the National Guard base at Fort Pickett on Tuesday night, who fled after stealing the armored vehicle. The man was on the run for several hours before being apprehended. It's not clear why he went on the joyride, but at least no one was injured. Well, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talisyo English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you so much for watching.